What's up, everybody? This video we're going to talk about the program map, and I wanted to create a visual explaining all the different programs that we have and how they overlap and kind of what in how they fit in relation to a lot of other programs that you might have seen. So the first thing I'm going to point out is actually over here on the left side. This is actually a graph, so you can see that there is less emphasis on strength at the bottom of the graph, and then we progress up to more strength development and more emphasis on strength. And then over here in the left corner, we've got more basic movements. These are going to be, stuff that people don't have a hard time learning. And then we're progressing to more complex, more advanced movements on the right. So you could make a chart with lots of different metrics. I could actually make another chart with two different metrics and move these dots around, or I could even make one that is three-dimensional. But I think this is going to explain it well for most people. So now you can see the main program. This is the general program that we have, and that's the mastery program. So this is where a lot of the structure starts when I'm making the programming. And this is what has been working for folks for 10 plus years of programming. So I think I'm going on 12 or 13 years of 7-day-a-week programming, and that's really where I put in all that experience. You'll notice that it's a little bit up and to the right, so it's a little bit more strength development. We still touch on some of the advanced movements. There's always going to be scaling stuff for people, but that's the biggest thing. Now the other dots are overlapping because again they all kind of made up and match each other so that people can go from one to the next. So I'm gonna break down some of these other programs, and then we'll talk about how that works. Now, realistically, if this was an actual like data graph, the bubbles would be way more overlapped, but I wouldn't be able to fit in all the words and the little symbols. So I wanted to make sure that you can see that. So let's go ahead and zoom it in. And so one of the first things you'll notice is that there's this Propel. So the Thrivestry Propel program is has been developed because a lot of people were asking for a little bit less lifting and a little bit more just sort of Metcon and just sort of more fun workouts, if you will. So one of the things that we know from doing this for so long is that we like to have three, sometimes 4 lifts in a week and then a short Metcon, and then the rest of the days are longer Metcons. And then so it's about half the time, about 50% of the time, and that changes throughout the 6-week cycles. And then usually within that we have one lift that we're focusing on, which usually shows up only once or twice a week. So usually it's between 11 and 12 sessions over 6 weeks. But the feedback that we keep getting is that members get bored. So for those of you guys who've been doing the program for a while, you always have a few people who grumble about, oh man, we got to do these power cleans again, or we're doing squats again. And the benefit, of course, you guys all know who are subscribers, is that having people do the same lift once or twice a week makes it far more easy to coach for newer people. They can really learn it because they're seeing it often enough. And for the advanced folks, they're not going to continue to progress because they need a little bit more routine to continue to make gains. If they're still doing these lifts a little bit more randomly, they're not going to progress, and they're not going to progress. Usually they just plateau completely on those lifts. The beginners tend to show huge improvements over the 6 weeks. But that being said, there's kind of this, people are getting bored. They kind of want to try something different. So the Propel is a version of the Mastery program with a bit less lifting. So it's going to be more like 2 lifts a week with a short Metcon, and then we're not going to have any strength cycles. So if for example the main program is doing a front squat cycle, I'll mix it up with maybe we do overhead squats instead. So it's a front squat and then an overhead squat and then a back squat and then some other variation. Then it's a box squat, and we'll use some more of those other variations. So again, then the Metcon might be the same for both programs, but the lift will change. And then as I said, I'll be pulling out some of those lifting days and putting in just sort of longer Metcons. We may do that same lift as a skill that day, so we're just going to spend 8 or 10 minutes kind of working on the lift but not going super heavy, and then it might be a 20 or 30 minute Metcon after. I'm also going to pull out some of the more advanced stuff. Again, I just talking to people, they just really don't like they just dread having to coach snatches. This is for gyms that have a lot of new people or people who have come in through some sort of boot camp or something, and it's really hard to teach a complicated skill like snatches or handstand push-ups or whatever, and people just end up feeling rejected. Now, as most of you guys know, in the regular program, we have very little of those movements, and there's always scaling options. So a lot of times the more advanced things like squat snatches and muscle ups and handstand push-ups and even pistols will end up being a scale up options for those people who want to do that. So that's the big thing. Now, the Thrivestry Propel program is not an extra program, so it's actually going to be included with the regular programming. So basically, for one subscription, you get 2 programs, and the benefit of this is you're going to be able to pick and choose which one you want to go with. I wouldn't recommend doing it week to week. I do more like every 6 weeks, because you'll have people follow, for example, a strength focus for 6 weeks, and then you might want to take a cycle off. So you say, what, we're not going to do this next cycle of power snatches, so we're just gonna do the Propel version and have a little bit more Metcon and a little bit less lifting, because that's what people want, right? Ideally, everyone would want the best program for them that's going to get them the best results, but a lot of times people just want a little bit more entertainment, and so they're not as I could make even the mastery program a little bit more effective, but it wouldn't be as fun, right? It'd be a little bit more monotonous, and attendance might go down. So the Thrivestry Propel is kind of taking it the other way, where hopefully we can create a little bit more engagement and a little bit more, quote, fun workouts. But as I said, you can do a 6 weeks and then seamlessly go to the other one, right? So there is an option there too, where you may just decide to stick with the mastery program with the strength focus, but one day you might just pull one of the other days. So if there's a day that had a lift and a short metcon on the mastery, but you really liked the Propel version, you can just plug and play, because it's going to be the same kind of movement patterns. If there's lots of squatting and running in the workout, you'll see squatting and running in the longer workout. So the other big thing to note here is this Thrivestry Spark. So the Thrivestry Spark is going to be a, why can't I move this? The Thrivestry Spark here is even less emphasis on strength and even more emphasis on the basics. And so it's basically a program that's designed to be, you can do it in 45 minutes, but there's extra programming in there. So there's warm-ups you can do, and kind of bonus work for glutes and core, type stuff for the people who want that. And then you can easily make an hour class out of it. And then it also gives you a little bit more time to coach. But it's doable in 45 minutes. It's programmed out to the minute, and it doesn't have a barbell. Now, we know as coaches that people should learn how to use a barbell, and it's going to make their training and their lives better. But again, there's just a lot of people like seniors and teens, and again, people who are just afraid of CrossFit, or who just want more cardio, if you will, that kind of shy away from the barbell. So this option's for them. This option is going to be it starts off with a kind of a warm-up flow that's kind of a little bit like yoga, and then then we go into some skill work, which is kind of sneaking in some strength. It's going to be a lot of dumbbell types presses and single leg deadlifts, usually on the minute, so that people can kind of stay on time. And they're not going to be lifting a ton of weight, but it is going to help them learn the movements. And you can see that the focus is not just on Metcon, it's also on balance and coordination. So it's also going to, like I said, it's a lot of single limb work. But we're only going to spend 5 to 10 minutes on that each day, and it's very structured. Then there's going to be a 20 to 30 minute Metcon, right? So it's going to be a longer Metcon, not really designed to be measured like CrossFit, because again, a lot of people gravitate toward this style of training because they don't like being measured, and that's a whole other topic of conversation. But what we're looking into is heart rate monitors like MyZone and Morpheus, and there's some other ones that we want to learn about, so that people can then track using a tool like that. I'll still probably put in a few like benchmarks, maybe once a week or occasionally, so that people still can that like the log can log that and then track their progress over time. We do know that people who log their performances over time and are constantly looking back to seeing how much better they've gotten are much more motivated and much more consistent with their training. So the Thrivestry Spark is great if you have you can put it on your schedule. And it can just be people who want more cardio, people who don't want to go to CrossFit classes. If you guys are already doing like a boot camp class or a burn class or a sweat class, the Spark is the programming that will work for that. Now, what's great about it integrated with the regular programming, like the Propel is that, now one thing I'll point out is this is very, very different programming. It's not like the Mastery and the Propel are going to be very similar, and the Spark is like a whole different format, but it's the same movement pattern. So people can go back and forth day to day. So, one of the things that I've seen a lot of people doing is they have their own, boot camp style class, and it's not really looking at what the gym's doing. And if people can go back and forth, they may end up doing 150 wall balls in their boot camp class, and then they go to CrossFit the next day and there's 150 wall balls. Right, and that's not healthy. That's not really what we want to do, and it really means they're not on the same program. They're not following programming. They're just exercising, and following programming we know is better for injury prevention and for getting results. And so by having it be similar movement patterns and making sure that the programming is in alignment, you might have people do CrossFit style training 3 days a week, and then they do a Spark, and it's a little bit that since we're not measuring, they can push themselves as they want, or they can just go through the motions. And the same thing goes the other way. When you start having the boot camp people and they're doing the Spark workouts 3 or 4 days a week, then maybe after 6 months they've really gotten a lot fitter. Their capacity's gone up. Again, you've created more balance and everything between right and left, and even their own actual balance has gotten better. It might be time for them to start going up. Now, if it's completely separate programming, they're not going to be able to jump. They're going to be very, very leery or nervous about jumping into the CrossFit style classes. And so what you can do is, because it's this very similar workouts and a lot of the same movements, you can show them, look, the dumbbells you used in the Spark is actually heavier than the health option for the main programming. And so they'll be like, whoa, yeah, okay, and then you can start building up their confidence. And then they can say, okay, look, so you've been coming to Spark, 3 times per week. Why don't you do 2 Spark and 1 CrossFit? And what's great is, of course, usually you have more of those CrossFit classes than all the rest, and so it's like now you have more options in the schedule, and then you can start easing them into the other program, right? Which is, again, what we want for longevity. We want to have the program that has a little bit more strength and a little bit more advanced movements, because that's going to actually be more engaging in the long run than just doing 20-30 minute cardio sessions all the time. So again, this is like a progression for people, so they can either they can have an option to do the the Spark class and do a little bit more aerobic work, or we can also be building people up because the programming overlaps. Now, the other thing I'll point out is the competition programming. So this is how the competition programming works. It is an extension of, it has a lot of its own skill work and strength work and gymnastics that's totally different than what the gym does. But I do try to overlap the Metcons, and so there is still some overlap where people who are doing the competition programming can come in and do some open gym to get some of their lifting and skill work done, and then they can jump in with the class. And so we do want our competitors going to class as much as possible, at least once or twice a week. It doesn't have to be every single time they come to the gym, but it keeps them plugged into the community. It keeps things from being weird, and they am off in the corner, and there's a whole problem with that, and I've written about that multiple times. And so that the reason why I like them overlapping is obviously so they can go to classes, but again, it works as a stepping stone. And if they're doing the regular classes and they're scaling up pretty regularly, you can say, hey, that's the competition thing. Have you thought about competing? Are you interested in doing competition programming? And then you might show them and say, look, it's basically all this extra work and the skills and the lifting, but then we do a lot of the same Metcons just scaled up. And so you can actually get more people to participate in competitions, which is pretty cool. And then we have these other two little bubbles are the barbell specialty program and the gymnastics sort of calisthenics program. I wouldn't call it a pure gymnastics program because it's still a lot more just sort of gymnastics in the sense of the body weight movements that we do a lot in competitions. So there's going to be some other gymnastics-y stuff in there beyond just doing toes to bar and pistols, but it is a lot of muscle ups and pistols and all that sort of thing. But they're extensions. Again, they do kind of overlap and they do mesh with the regular gym programming and the competition programming. In fact, those programs are basically pieces of the competition programming broken out and then added to make sure that everything still is in alignment. So I hope this shows you guys kind of what we're doing with all of our programs. The last couple things I'll mention is that I made some other little these other little symbols here. And this first one, this triangle that's way up here, high strength development, kind of medium low skill development or skill requirement is powerlifting. So this would be the kind of where powerlifting would sit. If you had a pure powerlifting program, again, it's maxed out on the strength side, and it's not purely basic, but it's also not the same as learning Olympic lifts or gymnastics. And then down here on the left, kind of at the very bottom of the scale for strength and for skill development, is sort of a spin class. Now, I know there's a lot of technique and skill that goes into spin classes, so I'm not trying to say that they don't do that, but after you learn those skills in the first few weeks or few months, there's not a lot more skill development going on. It's purely engine work. And then over here we've got this little hexagon, I guess, and this is going to be where I see yoga and martial arts and maybe even dancing sort of lying. Again, little to no strength development. I know there's some strength involved in yoga and martial arts and some really advanced moves, but so it's not no strength development, but very little strength emphasis, but a lot of technical emphasis. When you start incorporating in very complex movements and timing, we see it way over here on this side of the scale. So that's it, guys. This is the program map that we have. We've developed to help you guys visualize and maybe help you guys understand what these programs are, so that when you're thinking about, okay, how do I want to what sort of program do I want to set up for my gym, and how do I overlap them? How do I lay them out? And then in a future video, I plan on kind of looking at showing you guys an example schedule of where you could kind of spread these things out, so that you're not doing too much extra coaching with a bunch of classes of only 2 or 3 people, but the clients can still maximize their experience. That's it for today, guys. Thanks a lot, and I'll see you in the next video.